This episode and every episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show is brought to you by Ironmonger Brewing. Visit Ironmonger at their tap room in Marietta, Georgia, or online at ironmongerbrewing.com.
Open up a tab, grab a seat, and pour a pint. It's time for the Beer Guys Radio Show.
You want free beer? Go to the brewery.
Dedicated to the art, science, and enjoyment of craft beer.
Yo, what's wrong with the beer we got?
Now, here are your hosts, Tim Dennis and Brian Hewitt.
And welcome to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio Studios in Marietta, Georgia. And this week we're talking with Chicago's Revolution Brewing. I'm Tim Dennis, and with me as always is my good friend and co-host, Brian Hewitt.
Hey, Tim. So joining us today, we have John, a.k.a. Jumpy Palos, the pub brewer for Revolution Brewing. We're going to talk about collaborations, music, wood and barrel-aged beers, and probably all things Chicago. Jumpy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. So we were talking a little bit about weather before we went on the air here, and I think you said you're 25 and plenty breezy up there right now, huh?
Yeah, it's a beautiful November day, right?
Yeah, straight from summer to winter, huh?
Yeah, you know, it snowed on Halloween, and that was the start of winter for us. I thought it would be just
that's crazy.
You
know, Atlanta is funny that it can go Halloween. You could either be shorts and t-shirts, or hoodies and gloves and hats and all that. That's the odd. But Thanksgiving could be that way sometimes here.
Oh yes, yeah. It's been I think it's been 80 on the Thanksgiving before.
Yeah, but we're having a cold snap. We got down to at least low 20s, maybe high teens last night, which I don't care for, Brian. I'm not a fan. That's why I moved down south, was to get away from that stuff.
I'm not either. I like it a little cooler, but not, this is too much.
Yeah,
this is too far.
A little too crazy. But last weekend was a nice weekend, Brian. Gorgeous day to get out, drink some beer, maybe a little patio weather there. So what'd you get into last week?
I got into a fair amount of stuff. So I ran over and met up with Becky Smalls over at Pontoon, and I want to sample a little of that Down with the Thickness that they came out with, a big, thick imperial stout. Actually, milk stout. Anyway, big and rich. But the thing that kind of blew my mind was that snozberries. They poured it, and they pour it carefully. The thing erupted with like foam of fruit. It looked like a smoothie, and once it's settled down a bit, it looked a little bit more like a beer. It did sort of taste like a beer. It was a lot of fruit.
So the folks around here love the snozberries. Yeah. They're very popular in the local area. I'm going to throw it out there. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the concept of these beers.
It's too much
fruit.
Fruit.
They're an abomination, Brian, is what they are. So.
I think some of the commenters on Instagram agree with you. I thought it was a pretty decent beer.
Well, they're popular. Yeah. I mean, Variant does their Splody series. That's the same thing. So, Jumpy, are those hot, those Berliners that are just absolutely jam-packed with fruit to the point that they're thick?
You know, we've got a couple of them for sure. And, yeah, they're popular. People like their fruity beers. Nothing wrong with that. Different strokes for different folks, I guess.
No, they're wrong, Jumpy. They are wrong. No.
If the can is shrapnel, then that might be.
Yeah, very true. Absolutely.
So, yeah, I did that. I went over and dropped by our friends at Tap and Six and happened to be there for an Irish festival. So there's a guy playing, I forget the name of the pipes, but they sounded like bagpipes. So I'm just going to call them bagpipes. So I had bagpipes and beer. Went over to Contrast Artisan after that to say hey to Chase and drink some of his beers and mix a little cold brew into his porter that he was pouring there. That was really nice. I like to mix things up like that. And I also went to Variant to kind of a day after their second anniversary to drink in some of what they had left over. And they had a lot of really good stuff left over. And I think we're actually going to be getting into one of them today.
Yeah, we are getting into it right now. As we speak, we've got a little Variant strawberry milkshake, one of our beers of the week, Brian.
Indeed.
But I went to Reformation, which is up in my neck of the woods, as they say. And they just recently added a barbecue restaurant in there, Queenie's Barbecue, inside Reformation Brewery. And like I said, Saturday was just a gorgeous day, patio weather kind of day. So I went out and got me a barbecue sandwich and some Southern poutine, which is basically some fancy chili cheese fries. But got one of their jogger, their pale lagers that they've got up there, and enjoyed that. Took it easy and tried one. We had been hit up on social media a couple times about a newer brew pub here, Scepter Brewing Arts, new in the Atlanta area, doing a double IPA called Beware Wolves. And, it's about time for us to do our Best of Georgia Beer Awards. We've had a couple people comment saying this is a contender. This is the one. So I went out. I had to go out and hunt some of that down.
That specific beer or that brewery?
That specific beer. So
Okay.
people are all about that one. I've got one of those in the fridge, Brian. We may have to crack into that as well.
yeah.
So took that easy. Barbecue beer, kind of an easy weekend for me.
Sounds really
So
good.
That's it. Jumpy, how about you? Anything exciting this week?
Yeah, we had a couple fun days over at, your viewers aren't aware of it, FoBAB, Festival of Barrel Aged Beers. That was this weekend. Had a great time. Took home some hardware. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But other than that, we saw snow was on the menu, so I took the family out. We went nice little hike through some wildlife in our local area, and got a little bit of a last glimpse of nature covered in snow for the next 16 months.
Yeah, right. At least, at minimum.
That's
Get
smart.
it in while you can, right?
Yep.
Well, Tim, I think it's time for us to get into the beers of the week, as we've been hinting.
Crack open a cold one. It's the Truck and Tap Beer of the Week. Craft beer and food trucks in downtown Woodstock. Truckandtap.com.
Well, Brian, as always, we've got a nice selection here. We actually had a little trouble deciding on just a few to mention, but as I hinted, their variant Strawberry Milkshake Street was one of their anniversary beers. We have a crowler of that we've got into right now. We are going to get into the Scepter Beware Wolves, which is a double IPA, and that one is a double dry hop double IPA. They've got Mosaic, Citra, Equinaut, and Cascade in there, so we're going to get into that. And from the cellar, Brian, we have a Hardywood 2018 Gingerbread Stout that we're going to break into and see, and we'll see where it goes from there. We'll see what happens after that.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Seasonable.
Yes, exactly. Had to do one for the season. So, Brian, what is happening this week in the news?
What's in the news? The beer guys have the scoop.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
Time for headlines.
Okay, so we've got a little bit of beer buyout whiplash in the news, and it's been all over the news this week. You can't escape it. After initially walking away from the table, AB InBev has now decided to buy the rest of Craft Brew Alliance. The guys seem to be really desperate to sell out, almost as desperate, I think, as Golden Road was to sell out. But back in August, when AB InBev decided not to buy Craft Brew Alliance, it's opting instead to make a one-time $20 million payment and walk away. CBA's CEO said the decision was disappointing and making it clear that they were planning on this to happen and they didn't know what they were going to do. So if you're confused by the sudden change of heart to coming back now and buying it, you have to keep in mind that had AB InBev gone through with the deal back in August, they would have purchased the remaining 68.7% of CBA for $24.50 a share, which is about $328 million. But now, thanks to the turmoil that they caused by walking away from the deal, they get the rest of CBA for $16.50 a share. If my math is correct, that's around $221 million. And that's a savings of over $100 million.
So even with the $20 million fee, they're still making it. Now, see, Brian, I think I had some discussion on the internet about this because I said, I'm like, that's BS. That's dirty pool, man.
It is.
So we're going to pass on you. We'll pay this $20 million. We'll wait for the company to lose a half to a third of its value, and then we'll buy you. Someone chimed in and said that wasn't necessarily the case, not to necessarily look at it that way, that it could have been a case if they really did not want it, but saw it losing that kind of value. CBA couldn't get another buyer.
Yeah.
And Budweiser is, AB InBev is like, well, you know what? We're not going to let our investment tank on us.
Because they do have 30-some% of it. Yeah.
I don't know, man. Big beer just can't catch a break.
That's
right. That's what I've heard.
It seems shady, but when you think about it, it didn't cost them a thing because that $20 million they gave them, they just bought the thing out. So they got that $20 million
they
back.
Just got it back. They
so
saved money.
It's a little shell game type of situation. So, yes. I don't know if Big Beer caught a break or not in this one. I think maybe not. Who knows?
I don't know.
So I've seen a lot of interesting things on a beer can, but this is one of my favorites. North Dakota's Fargo Brewing Company put rescue dogs on their beer cans recently. They did this in partnership with a local rescue group, For Love of Dog Shelter. The limited run of cans features dogs that are having a hard time getting adopted. They didn't go into too many details on what that means, only saying that these are the kind of dogs it's best when they're the only pet in the house. So don't play nicely with others.
All of the dogs? Are these mug shots?
Yeah. There's shots that try to entice you to love the dogs. I don't think they put them behind bars. And in fact, I know they didn't. They were nice looking shots. So they had a can release that coincided with it. You could meet the dogs and drink the beers at the same time. And seemed like a really cool idea. I like it. Very
Fun
innovative.
Stuff, man.
Yeah.
Sounds good. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break. But we'll be back very soon to talk more with Revolution Brewing. Brian and Tim, the beer guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer.
Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth are always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy, Brian. They've got 18 of them.
As for the truck part, that's where it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks, so you're getting a different menu every day.
Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth.
Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the beer guys sent you.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
The numbers all go to 11.
Does that mean it's louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
Now, back to the Beer Guys radio show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. If you miss an episode, don't worry. All episodes are available as a podcast. Subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and never miss a show. Now back to our talk.
It is talk time, Brian.
That's right. Talk time with Jumpy, Palos from Revolution Brewing.
Jumpy, welcome to Talk Time.
Talk time it is.
It is. There it is, man. We wanted to go something you mentioned in the first segment that just happened there in Chicago. Big festival, big event you guys have there annually, the Festival of Wood and Barrel-Aged Beers, known to those in the know as FoBAB. And you guys actually performed pretty well there. You took home a couple medals, correct?
That's right. Yeah. Took home 2, actually, a gold and a silver.
What beers was that for?
So it was for our VSOR, our very special rye, and our strawberry straight jacket barley wine.
So those haven't been released. They're actually upcoming, correct?
That's right. That those are coming out of our Deep Wood series. Marty Scott is the guy who runs that program, and very, very talented brewer and blender. And we got a great team of guys over there that are, just pumping out great beers every year. But it's nice to have a little extra recognition on top of what we already know. That's just delicious liquid.
Absolutely.
So I have to know, what on earth is a rye way? Is it kind of like a highway? Is it spicy highway?
So we got the idea, you've got your barley wines, right? You've got your wheat wines, and, why not make a rye wine? And that's where we got the idea for that one. It's a significant portion of rye in the mash. Very, very tough beer to brew for rye reasons. If anyone's ever made a rye beer, a rye heavy beer, they know that can be a very stuck sparge very quickly.
Sticky,
and if you make a strong beer, then that also comes into play. So when you combine the two, it's a challenging beer, but it's always been one of the favorites around here. We'd make a very popular barley wine. We make a couple of very popular stouts, porters, all barrel aged, but the rye wine has always been a very loved one over around here. And even there was times when they were talking about like, hey, maybe we should pull back this year. It's an expensive beer to brew. It's a tough beer to brew, but the staff like it so much that we always end up brewing it anyway. And very special rye is a blend of multi-year rye, so multiple years in the barrel blended with fresher beer, and you get a really unique final product that has a lot to offer.
I'm intrigued.
I'm getting thirsty here.
Yeah,
so sounds like something I'd love to try. I love barley wines and wheat wines and that. Wheat wines you don't see a lot of anymore.
I miss
so
them.
It's always nice to see one out there. Boulevard did a nice wheat wine.
Oh, I love that. Harvest
and
Dance.
Then O'Neill and Sutton. I think it's O'Neill and Sutton, isn't that it? Hutton and Smith.
Hutton and
Smith up in Chattanooga had a nice one on there. But that's it. So for those that don't know, I think it's probably fairly self-explanatory, but what is FoBAB all about?
So FoBAB has been running for well before my time in the beer industry. I think it began way back in the day in the upstairs of, I think it was Haymarket, actually. Old P. Crowley might have been the first guy that ran FoBAB. It's just a celebration of beer in wooden barrels. And Chicago has, with Goose Island and the Bourbon County program, effectively become the home of that type of beer. And a lot of breweries, including Revolution, but certainly not limited to Revolution. We've got a lot of great breweries here that have continued that tradition. So that festival has been running for a long, long time. We've got it at the UIC Forum now. It's been its home for a couple of years now. And it celebrates beer in wood, whether it be barrel-aged beers in bourbon or rye, or whether it's sour beer.
in wine barrels or virgin oak or whatever it might be. Now there's meads and ciders as well, but it's basically just the marriage of alcoholic beverages, specifically beer, but sometimes others, in wood.
I thought it was really interesting that I was looking at the awarded beers, and they separate out the wild or sour beers as being either non-acidic, which I think was the Brett's various ones, and then the acidic varieties. So they had a designation that told you what you were getting in terms
Funk
of
and
acid.
sour,
Yeah,
right?
kind of
Okay.
like a funk and a sour differentiation, which was kind of neat. I've not seen that before.
Do you know how long they've been splitting it out like that, Jumpy?
I believe the categories change a little bit every
Okay.
year or every other year. I'm pretty sure they did that the first time around when they started doing more wild beers, and then they kind of combined everything, and then they separated again. It also goes with the ebbs and flows of how many entries are coming in. So if you've got
Sure.
you see this with GABF as well. If you've got an overflow in one category, or if you have not enough entries into one category, then you kind of have to adjust the categories accordingly.
That makes sense, because brewers a lot talk about that we need some new ways to, delineate wild beer. The catch-all sour beer is such a catch-all.
Yeah.
And there's this, like you said, you can have a Brett beer in there or a truly acidic sour beer, two different things there. So, and we actually had one of our Georgia breweries go up and get a medal this year, Monday Night Brewing. They got bronze for their Tie 8 On, which is a strong ale barrel aged. That's a really delicious beer. And after seeing that, I looked around, and Brian, we had one in the cellar here in the studio.
We did, yeah.
We'll crack into that a little later.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Enjoy that.
That's going to be fantastic. So we were talking before we got recording that we started the Beer Guys radio show around the same time that you got started at Revolution Brewing, right?
That's right. Yeah.
When was that? The beginning of 2016 for you?
Yeah, it was, I want to say around second week of January 2016. And I got started on the packaging line, got into brewing. I was assistant brewer, came over from our big production facility into the brew pub and took over as head brewer, and I've been here ever since.
Nice. So you're now currently the pub brewer. So which of Revolution's beers do you brew at this point in time?
So I'll do a few of the core beers every once in a while. Things like Rosa or Paddy Wagon or Fistmas, those things that'll go into can. We'll just do a pub version. And this could be just for logistic reasons or just because we want to have a little bit of a different take on it. No beer brewed on two different systems is ever going to taste the same. We've realized that time and time again. But essentially, I run the R&D. So mostly new recipes. I'll try out new ingredients, new techniques, new suppliers, new malts, new hops, that kind of thing. And the beers that perform well here will be the beers that go into the pipeline to enter cans, national distribution, stuff like that. It all gets started at the pub. This is effectively, the test kitchen for Big Rev.
That's the fun brewing.
Yeah,
that's the brewing you want to do is to get in there.
We got the right guy on the phone here.
Yep.
Now, you mentioned trying out different malts and that, and something I just saw, I got a newsletter from Riverbend Malt House, craft maltster out of Asheville, North Carolina, and they have started a program to where they can allow smaller breweries to create their own malt. You can come in there and choose what grain you want to use. You can choose what SRM you want it, how dark you want to get it, and all these things. Have you ever done, Jumpy, have you ever created your own malt for a beer?
I've done it on the homebrew scale, especially with smoking malt. You can get you can get smoke character that you cannot get on a commercial scale. We do custom blends over here, so we have a very good relationship with Byerman, and we'll request like, can I get 30% of this, 40% of this, 10% of this? We do that for Oktoberfest and a couple other beers as well. As far as making malt from scratch, no, not yet. That sounds pretty awesome, though.
Yeah, kind of cool. And that's I've seen more chatter about these craft maltsters coming up in different places.
Sure.
There was a Facebook group, Brewers Facebook group, that was talking about it recently. And then we've got one coming to Georgia soon. Should be opening here. Asheville Riverbend is a fairly good size, serving the Southeast. So it's cool to see. I think malt was something, I wouldn't say it's overlooked, but Jumpy, people really never put the same focus on the malt really as they did how much they took of the hops until recently.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, if you think about the progression of craft brew, people really didn't have the same focus on yeast until a couple of years ago when you started to see these little independent yeast manufacturers come up. And now there's kind of a more widespread look at the entire spectrum of flavor in beer, and malts eventually had to come into the play. And I think that's awesome. There's a lot to offer. There's been some new malts that we've tried out, or newish malts. that really kind of blew me away and got me thinking, like, why isn't anybody really focusing on experimentation and innovation in this? And it's great to see that it's happening.
Yeah, when I started homebrewing, you had a choice of like White Labs, Y yeast, or like the USO 405s.
Yeah.
You know, those were your yeast. That was it. It's cool. And we've talked recently about starting to look at terroir with hops and grains and all that. We had Stan Hieronymus was on the show not long ago, talked a little bit about, hop terroir and stuff, but there's just a lot of angles there that you can look at with it.
Indeed.
Cool stuff. Well, we need to take another break. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We'll be back with more from Revolution Brewing right after this.
Is your brewery or restaurant flooring all jacked up? Your foundation needs to be protected from heat, chemicals, and other contaminants. At the same time, you want to make sure it's slip resistant and you can clean up your messes with soap and water. You know who to call?
ResTech.
We've been manufacturing poured-in-place flooring since 2002, and we've got solutions to fit any facility's needs. Go on and visit our website at
ResTech.net.
That's res-tek.net. Drop us a line and we will come to you for a free evaluation.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever thought about owning your own brewery but don't know what it takes to get one built? We're Storytime Construction, and we build breweries. We're Georgia's most experienced and hands-on contractors when it comes to building new breweries and tap rooms, or expanding existing breweries. We offer full build-outs, remodeling, and additions, as well as consulting and construction management. Give us a call at 770-733-4343. Storytime Construction. We build breweries.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
I didn't enjoy it at all.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to Beer Guys Radio Show. I want to give a quick shout out to one of our great radio affiliates, WRMN 1410 AM in Elgin, Illinois. Catch Beer Guys Radio on WRMN every Saturday at noon local time. Now back to our beer talk with Jumpy from Revolution Brewing.
You like saying that, don't you?
Yes,
Brian?
I do.
Jumpy isn't really that jumpy. He's chill.
He is pretty
chill, yeah.
Chill, man. Well, Jump. One thing, the way we originally got connected with you is we were reached out to about the collaboration you'd done with the band Chevelle, and did have plans to have Chevelle on the show, but couldn't get schedules aligned there. But you brewed a beer called La Gargola collaboration. How'd that come about, and kind of what was the process like there?
Yeah, so they actually reached out to us, I'd say about 6 to 9 months before we actually brewed the beer. And they're local guys, they're from the North Burbs. So they grew up here and they were getting into beer just about when we were starting up our brewery. So they became quick fans of Revolution. They're like, hey, you guys are a Chicago brewery. We're a Chicago band. We should do something here. It took a while for all of our schedules to work out, but eventually we got it done and it was great. They came over. They had a lot of input in the beer. They had some strong opinions about what they wanted to make, what they didn't want to make, and helped out with the process. We made a really, really nice Helles lager. We were drinking it backstage at Lollapalooza. It was a great time.
That sounds like fun. Yeah. But, talking about the collaborations, you said they had strong opinions, and that I imagine as a brewer, that's probably a lot more fun than someone that just wants to basically slap their name on something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've done a couple of collabs before, and there is sometimes where people are like, hey, and they're very nice about it. They're like, hey, you're the professional, you're the expert, whatever you think. But Chevelle, and we did a collaboration with a Southside band called the Tossers, and they both had strong opinions about what they wanted to drink. Tossers said, hey, the Tossers drink one thing, stout. I'm like, okay, cool.
Okay.
Chevelle, they're like, we like German beers. That's our thing. I'm like, all right, man, I can work with that.
Cool.
I'm not familiar with the band, the Tossers, but that does sound like an insult I've heard in the UK. So are they like a Brit punk type of band, or are they ska or something like that?
Yeah, like an Irish rock kind of band.
Nice.
That sounds
that fits with the whole stout thing. So when you were you're getting ready to team up with Chevelle, what styles of beer did they say, there's no way we're not brewing this? Like, what did they immediately eliminate? Because I'm curious about that.
We had a lot of nice conversations about when you get into craft beer, and I'm sure we've all been through this cycle, you're like, what's the most flavorful, the strongest, and most intense beer that I could possibly get my hands on? And then couple of years go by, and you're like, I think I could sit down and have a nice Pilsner, and that's exactly what I need. And I think they had been through that cycle just like I have, just like most of us have. We still appreciate those beers, love them to death, but sometimes you just want a nice, well-crafted, well-balanced German-style lager, and they're like, yeah, that's what we want to do. Pete, he went out for his wedding, went out to Germany. He was drinking a lot of Kolsch's out there, and just really had appreciation for that style of beer, and wanted to create something similar. So I'm a big fan of German beers. I've studied a lot about how German beers are made and making them the way that Germans would make them. And so we made this Hazy approved, and we used all traditional ingredients, and nothing extra, nothing added, captured CO2, all that. We did a very traditional beer, and in the end of the day, everyone was really happy with it.
So I had read that you're also a musician, so it makes sense that you would collaborate with these guys. Which is a bigger passion for you, beer or music?
That's a good question.
That's a tough
spent
question.
A lot of time on both. Yeah, I've been playing music obviously longer than I've been making beer. I play about 24, 25 instruments, mostly string instruments.
Wow.
Much more of a hobby for me, but yeah, definitely something that I'm also very passionate about. Beer is both a hobby and a source for endless exploration. It's nice that a lot of the music that I'm into kind of goes hand in hand with beer. So Irish traditional and bluegrass and jazz and stuff like that. You're going to be drinking a lot of beer while you're playing that kind of music. Definitely up my alley.
Yeah, there is a lot of tie-ins there, and something we always mention talking music and beer collaborations. Our friends Nappy Roots have done a lot with it, and they're ones, Jumpy. They like to get their hands in there. They'll be shoveling the spent grain out of the mash tun, picking out the brews, and boy, they've got, what do they got? Half a dozen or 10 collabs under their belt now.
Oh, at least.
Wow!
Yeah,
So they just going around doing collabs, but we've talked to them about the creativity, the independence, all of these things that are important to both beer and music. That there really are a lot of parallels there, the creativity and everything. So it's kind of interesting to see kind of how the two play together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you were to pair a beer, let's talk about your FoBAB beers. What song would go with VSOR?
Well, let me think about that. If I'm going with VSOR,
that's a good question. I like that question.
That is a good question. So we're talking about something that's smooth, that's balanced.
That's also 14%.
Yeah.
It's strong. It's definitely got some bite to it. I'm gonna go the Passenger Iggy Pop. How about that?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then you know what? Let's throw the other one out there. How about Strawberry Jacket? What song's gonna go with that one?
Strawberry Jacket. Let me think about this one.
A little sweeter, also nearly as strong.
Mm-hmm.
You got that mixture of bourbon and rye barrels, not just all rye influence there. So that's interesting.
Yeah. I'm going a little sweet, a little strong. I'm going Die, 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 My Darling.
The Misfits.
Wow.
Okay, man. I can get into that even without the beer in there. That's
Tim is already thinking, did we just become best friends?
When you said that, man, they were my jam back in the day. Do you know that they're reuniting for a tour with Danzig?
Is this the last reuniting, or are they going to do it another couple?
There's no telling, but I know they've got one show in Pittsburgh where he's going to be there. So
awesome.
Yeah, fun stuff. Maybe I'll get some Strawberry Jacket and head up to the show in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah.
Try to sneak that in, right?
So speaking about pairing, beer and music, maybe we pair beer and iconic Chicago foods. So if you took like a deep dish pizza, which of your beers would you recommend drinking with that?
Well, with pizza, I always do German style beers, right? That's always been my thing. I'm not sure where that started, but as you may know, deep dish pizza, it's a little bit of a different animal. So I'd probably go with our Baphomet Bock, actually. You still got the nice, clean German finish, but you got a little bit more body to hold up to. Let's be honest here. What is essentially a casserole?
It's a casserole.
A hand casserole.
Delicious casserole. Yeah.
Oh, delicious casserole.
How about an Italian beef?
Italian beef? I'll go a little lighter with that one. I'm gonna say Rev Pills. You want to cut through that fat a little bit. You're going to have that beef dipped in the jus. That's just the way you got to do it. There's no option there.
Yes.
So you want to cut through that fat, go with the Rev Pills, dry out your palate a little bit to get the next bite in.
Who's got the best Italian beef in Chicago?
Ooh, good question. Well, actually, we've got a special right now here at the pub, so I'm going to say Revolution Brew Pub has the best Italian beef.
Now I'm even more intrigued. I got to get up there. Absolutely. And finally, we've got to ask, how about a good old Chicago dog? What beer goes with that?
All right. Good old Chicago dog. The trick with the Chicago dog is you drag the cellar, drag the garden through the dog, right? I don't know if you ever heard that, but there's a little bit of everything on that. You got a little tang, you got a little sweetness, from your relish. I'm gonna say anti-hero. You got to have a classic Chicago beer for classic Chicago food.
There you go. That's it. We promise no more questions that require too much thought provoking there.
Those are my favorite kind of questions.
Well, unless I ask about that Boilermaker that I wanted to ask about.
Let's do it, Brian.
Might as well do it now.
It's cruel of you to ask this, but go ahead and ask.
It's really a rough one, but I'm gonna make you do it. So a Revolution Boilermaker with Malort. What beer do you use?
Well, if you're going Malort, then you're going all out at that point.
Yes.
So I'm saying D-Star.
D-Star and Malort.
You're going to take that. Yep.
Okay.
Take that nice, strong Imperial Stout, and you're going to dose it with Malort because that's the only thing that could tame that dragon.
Now, is that too classy of a pairing for that? Or, maybe that's maybe that's the only thing that can handle that. Because
it's just the right amount of class.
Just the right amount.
Just the right amount of class. Just perfect pairing. Match made in heaven there.
There you go.
Oh, man. Gosh. So many wonderful things in Chicago with Italian beef and Malort. And
that's right.
Just all the greatest things in the world. Well, you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We need to take another break, but we'll be back with more from Revolution Brewing right after this.
Craft beer forged with a reverence for tradition and new styles that start a revolution. Ironmonger Brewing. The brewers at Ironmonger Brewing pride themselves at being masters of barrel-aged, hoppy, and sour beers. They invite you to their tap room in Marietta, Georgia to taste and see. Also visit their barrel room for an intimate drinking experience with great live entertainment. Keep up to date on all things Ironmonger by liking them on Facebook. Ironmonger Brewing, establishing a new standard in craft beer.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
To be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo!
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beerguys. Patrons get cool perks like Beer Guys swag, commercial-free episodes, and even bonus episodes that aren't available anywhere else. Now let's get back to our talk with Jumpy Palos from Revolution Brewing.
Jumpy, we want to talk a little more specifically about the beers that you brew there at Revolution, and we're actually getting to one we talked about earlier, not a Revolution beer, but the tie-in on from Monday night.
Yes,
and they got us discussing what was in this beer. This is a blend of 8 barrel-aged beers with vanilla in it. Just fantastic beer, and you had a fantastic suggestion. So we are going to ask you another tough question. If you had to brew a beer and you had to put 20 different pastries in it, what 20 pastries would you? He's like, oh no.
Well, let me get my file up real quick.
You know what? How about a little easier one? What was the last beer that you brewed?
The last beer I brewed is actually a pretty fun one. So we brewed a Black Hazy IPA.
Don't see a lot of the black hazy.
Black and hazy.
That's right.
Can you tell that it's hazy?
Yeah. So we were kind of wondering that ourselves, and we tried a couple trial versions, and you'll get this really interesting slight roast character and chocolate milk type consistency or color, I should say, opaqueness. Pretty interesting.
Kind of like fog at night. You wouldn't think you could see, but you kind of get a little bit of a texture.
I can see, because there's a difference. You can tell a difference in like a cloudy beer from Improper Brewing and a hazy beer. There's definitely a difference in the way those two look. Mm-hmm. So I definitely could see where you would be able to see haze in a black IPA. It'd be cool. Now I want one. Now I want to try one.
I wonder if black IPAs are making a comeback, because I believe it was Bell's released in the TTB has a label approval for, I think it's Black Hearted IPA. It's like they're Two Hearted, but it's like the black IPA version of it. Are you seeing a lot more interest in black IPAs right now?
Not here, but I have heard from some of my coworkers that have taken little beer tours in other cities that they're starting to see them pick up a little bit, which for me, that's awesome. Yeah, tap into that nostalgia a little bit. That style was pretty popular 5, 6, 7 years ago, and it'd be cool to see a few more of them.
You know what? Oddly enough, the best black IPA I ever had, I have a buddy out of Tampa, Florida, that is a home brewer, and he did a batch and brought it up to Hunapoo's Day. He brought a keg to Hunapoo's.
Yep.
And that is probably the finest black IPA I've ever had. So he's one of those guys, Jumpy, that brews like twice a year. And when he does, they're just phenomenal. And it's no big deal to him. He just kind of brews, and they're really good beers. That was really nice. That was a fun time. Absolutely.
He might be the only person that does that did not eventually become a brewer, as far as I know.
Yeah.
At least I assume he has.
I don't think he had any interest to. He just brewed beer to drink every now and then. Absolutely. Well, that's what other fun things are going on there at Revolution?
We do a little bit of a mix of the old and the new here at the pub. Like I said, I'm doing a lot of the R&D over here, so we just released another little blast from the past, like I was saying, a clear IPA, if you can believe it. Extra pale ale is what we're calling it, but 6.2% beer that you can actually read a newspaper through if you wanted to. And we used some experimental hops from our friends over at Hopsteiner. So a lot of trying out different things, see what works, see what doesn't. We have our Hero series where we'll try out new hops, old hops, interesting hops that we just happen to like. And we'll release one of those every couple months. Other than that, a little bit of everything. Some classic beers. I do a lot of German beers over here. And then some really interesting ones. We have a peanut butter imperial brown ale on tap. We've got a dark chocolate pomegranate stout on tap as well.
So a couple of your more recent beers were a clear IPA.
Yes.
And a hazy black IPA.
Yeah. That's kind of...
Was that intentional? Was that a let's see how far we can run the spectrum here?
Yeah, a little bit of that.
Okay. All right.
Eventually, everything will come to a logical conclusion. The pendulum will swing as far as it can one direction and then to the next. And sometimes
Taste the rainbow,
quickly.
Brian.
Yes.
Taste
It'll
the rainbow.
come to a conclusion, yep.
So you'd mentioned you were trying a bunch of interesting new experimental hops. Are there any new hops out there that really have you excited?
Yeah, the two that we used in this recent batch, a lot of really cool characters in these. They were described to me as Super Citra and Mosaic without that grunginess. I'll just give the numbers now, just so anyone interested, but it's both Hopsteiner XO9326 and X10416. And we brewed a beer exclusively with those two, and it came out pretty awesome. It really does have a little bit of old and a little bit of new, and there's something special to it. So those will probably be working our way up to the big production brewery at some point, like most of the experimental stuff that we do here does. And hopefully we can have those in cans with an actual name on them in the near future. But really great hops. I'd look into them if you get your hands on them.
So will you be putting them in cans before they actually have a proper hop name? Because it sounds like you might be.
We've done it before. Our Tropic Hero actually did that. And I think we've kind of moved away from that. We want to actually have give a name, not a code on the can. But we'll see. It's happened before.
Yeah, I've seen it before from other breweries. Experimental hop, so-and-so or whatever. They just like the hop and roll with it there.
It can be an attraction.
Yeah.
Sure. People love that, man, when you're spinning through the different hops there.
So if I read it correctly, 2020 will be the 10th anniversary for Revolution Brewing. Am I right? And if so, what are your plans, or do you know yet?
So, yep, you're right. It's February is going to be year number 10. And I was here the first week that they opened. I was just drinking. I wasn't working here yet. But it was a great spot back then, and the neighborhood's changed a lot. But it's still the place to get beer in this neighborhood, which is maybe the highest concentration of breweries in the country, to be honest with you. I think we've got close to 20 breweries in a 1 mile radius, which is just insane. But
wow,
we've got a lot of stuff planned. We're going to be releasing a nice big barrel-aged beer blended with fruit from a bunch of different barrels. That's going to be a fun one. And we'll probably have a party. Doesn't help that it's in February, so it's kind of hard to plan a big party in February in Chicago. But we'll have a party, and we'll probably be celebrating the entire year at events and things like that. But we're all really excited. There's guys who've been here the entire 10 years. There's guys who've been drinking the beer since day one, like myself. And it's really a cool landmark for us.
It's been a good 10 years, too. Largest independent brewery in the state of Illinois now.
Mm-hmm.
In 10 years. I think I went to mention this earlier and we ran out of time, but Paste Magazine listed their top 50 most, I think they said most important or most influential breweries of the 2010s.
Yeah, that's
crazy. Revolution was on that list, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at my notes here, see if I can get this right. Number 34, I think.
Number 34, I believe.
On the list. So, yeah, that's when you're talking out of 8,000 breweries.
Yeah.
Or however many,
7,500, I think is the last
somewhere in there.
number I heard.
Number 34 out of 7,500 is not a bad spot at all.
I'll take that any day.
Yeah.
The 2010s are coming to an end, Tim. I
They
didn't
are,
even
the
realize that.
Well,
I had no idea.
2020 sounds futuristic to me.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
It just sounds like that's space tech. Why aren't our cars flying now?
I'm assuming flying cars.
Or kind of old-timey, too. It's like we're entering the Prohibition era, right? We're getting into the Roaring 20s again.
It's gonna be a good time then.
Get some
I think it'll have to
flapper
be,
girls and haircuts and that. So, I do think that's something maybe that breweries should look at. They should do Roaring 20s themed stuff throughout 2020. I think that would be a fun one to do.
Bring back some old styles.
Sure.
Do some, bathtub hooch, that
Bring
kind of
back
thing.
Prohibition.
So you mentioned you have
maybe not that.
a big a ton of breweries around there. What's the Chicago beer scene like? I mean, can you describe it? Can it be described? It seems like it's insane.
We have the most breweries of any city in the country, and they're concentrated in some areas more than any other. It's nuts. You can walk 1 mile and have 1 pint and drink way more than you should be. You could spend an entire month here and not even scratch the surface of the breweries here, which is awesome. This is one of the places, if not the place, to be in this country for craft beer. It's awesome to be here.
I knew Chicago had a scene. I honestly didn't know it was like that. That's I think being down here in the South, we hear a lot about Asheville because they're pretty dense there. There's 10 or 12 breweries that are all walking distance. You can go down in one day and hit 10 or 12 different spots here where, we've got some areas where you could hit 2 breweries, maybe 3 in walking distance, but not that. We're pretty spread out here in Georgia.
Theoretically, from where we're sitting now, you could hit 3 in a night.
This is true. We
Yeah.
do. We've got a nice little density right here in our little
do.
pocket, but
Yeah.
we're Georgia's young. Georgia's still young on the beer scene. We've really just had a few years of really good growth there. We're no Chicago. I haven't been to Chicago for the beer scene before. I've been in there for business trips and just quick in and out overnighters and that, but I haven't got to explore the beer scene.
I visited for the traffic.
For the traffic?
Yeah.
A lot of people do, I think.
Yeah, I was actually driving across country and I went through Chicago, and I wish I had stopped and went places, but I visited with a friend. But, we're running out of time. Jumpy, thanks for being with us. If people want to keep up with what's going on with Revolution Brewing, where should they go?
I would check out revbrew.com or any of our social media platforms. We're up on all of them, and we keep it up to date.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Coming up next week, we're going to be talking to one of Georgia's newest brewers, Still Fire Brewing. For more craft beer info, follow us online. We are Beer Guys Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great week, and don't forget to drink local. Cheers.